Marked by a tyrant after transmigrating. Chapter 46. Yeshu stared at Jin Wang in a daze. He didn't seem to understand why Jin Wang would say such a thing. He had never thought of it this way. Yeshu clearly remembered his identity in modern society. Those memories, experiences, and knowledge were all real. How could he be the original owner of this body? Impossible. Yeshu shook his head. This doesn't make sense. Jin Wang seemed to have heard something extremely funny. You told me so much just now. What other world transmigration, and that I'm just a character in a novel. Which part of that makes sense? Jin Wang didn't expect himself to believe Yeshu so easily and accept those incredible stories. When the answer was revealed, Jin Wang felt like he had a sudden epiphany. Yeshu's words tonight had answered many of the questions that had been bothering him for the past days. From the time he spent with Yeshu to the appearance of Yu Yan, there were more and more mysteries, but it made Jin Wang more and more convinced of one thing. That was, Yeshu would never orchestrate his assassination. With this as a basis, he couldn't help but recall his initial guess. Something might have happened to Yeshu during those 3 years. Moreover, this change might not have been as simple as it seemed. That was why he had used Xiao Huan to test Yeshu. As expected, Yeshu didn't know what had happened back then. After confirming that Yeshu hadn't changed, there was only one conclusion. No matter what happened during those 3 years, no matter what Yeshu hadn't told him, it wouldn't affect this conclusion. Yeshu's memories were damaged. This was the conclusion Jin Wang had reached after investigating, probing, and pondering over the past days. It wasn't until today that Yeshu had uncovered all the mysteries. The missing link had finally been filled in. Jin Wang told Yeshu all his deductions and said softly, "Since you can come here now, why can't you go there? Since everything is unclear, why can't we guess that when you lost your memories as a child, you actually came here? Back then, you acted like you were very unfamiliar with this world, but you were able to predict what would happen in the future like a god. If you didn't know the outcome in advance, how could you have done it?" Yeshu's eyelashes fluttered, and his voice grew weaker. "I don't know." He had also suspected that the original owner was the same as him, someone who had come here from another world. But that was just a guess after all, and there was no way to verify it. "There's only one thing that I still can't explain." Jin Wang continued, "Why did you betray me?" Yeshu said, "Wasn't that because the original wanted to avenge his family?" "Revenge?" Jin Wang chuckled, "You were only an illegitimate child of the Ye clan, the son of a servant girl. From the time you were born until you left the Ye clan, you did not receive any kindness or care from the Ye clan. Do you think that I would believe you'd want revenge for them?" Yeshu also felt that this explanation was not valid and muttered in a small voice, "How would I know what he was thinking?" Jin Wang also fell silent. Indeed, this was the only thing missing in this entire matter. Perhaps things aren't that complicated. Jin Wang suddenly said, "Just now, you said that we are currently in a novel, and at the beginning of this novel, Minister Ye plotted a rebellion to assassinate Zhen. To achieve this beginning, your betrayal was the most important part. You mean to say?" Jin Wang said, "What I want to say is, it's very possible that this betrayal was premeditated and that your actions were actually not up to you during those 3 years." Yeshu did not reply, and the hall fell silent for a long time. Jin Wang's guess was very bold, but it was not without reason. If during those 3 years, Yeshu, as the left prime minister, had no choice but to follow the original plot and do some things, then his abnormal behavior, his abnormal habits, and even the drastic changes in his personality would all have been explained. But Yeshu lowered his eyes. "These are only your guesses, there is no basis for them." "That's right, there is no basis for these things and there is no way to investigate them." Jin Wang sighed, then leaned over and hugged Yeshu, "But Ashu, the mysteries of this world have always been difficult to unravel. Don't be confused by the situation. Jin Wang stroked Yeshu's hair and said softly, to me, the secrets you are carrying and the truth behind these things are not that important. No matter what you have encountered, right now, you are by my side and that is enough. But what if I'm not? Jin Wang's eyes narrowed slightly. If you continue to be like this, I will really get angry. Yeshu immediately shut his mouth. Do you really need me to talk to you like this before you will be obedient? Jin Wang's hand slid down Yeshu's back, hinting at him, don't forget, you took advantage of my drunken stupor and secretly went to see another man. I haven't settled the score with you yet. Yeshu, but Xiao Huan is another Omega. But he likes you. Jin Wang interrupted, that bastard, he wanted to snatch you away a few years ago. Now that he has already become an Omega, he still hasn't given up. Zhen should give him an official position and send him to guard the borders. Yeshu raised his head, sending an Omega to the battlefield, aren't you going too far? Jin Wang calmly looked back at him. Yeshu immediately cowered. Xiao Huan grew up in the military, and his dream is to join the army. This is also quite good. Jin Wang laughed, his hand gently stroking Yeshu's back, all right, then his punishment will be decided first. What about you? I'm also going to be punished. Jin Wang glanced at him, who was the one crying and saying that he would be punished by me. Did he say that? Yeshu's brows drooped and with his slightly swollen eyes, he looked particularly pitiful. How does your majesty want to punish me? Jin Wang didn't answer. His hand slowly stroked down the other man's body until it reached his slightly bulging lower abdomen. Yeshu nervously clutched the thin blanket beneath him. With this little guy around, it's not very convenient. Jin Wang stroked his lower abdomen through his thin clothes, and said somewhat unwillingly, we'll just let you Zhen for now. After the child is born, Zhen can carry out today's punishment. Yeshu made an O sound and wanted to say something else, but he was interrupted by a commotion outside the window. The noise of the palace servants could be heard from outside the hall. Jin Wang pulled Yeshu up, it's almost midnight. Everyone should prepare to welcome the new year. Yeshu looked out the window. The hundreds of lanterns hanging from the palaces illuminated the entire imperial palace. We can't see clearly from here. I'll take you somewhere else. Jin Wang took the fox fur coat and placed it over Yeshu's shoulders, then picked him up in a princess carry. He walked out of the palace hall. Before Yeshu could ask him where he was going, he suddenly felt himself rising into the air. Jin Wang lightly tapped the ground with his feet and nimbly leapt onto the roof. He placed Yeshu firmly on the eaves. His field of vision immediately widened. Yeshu looked down and saw a few palace maids laughing and playing in the snow. Further away, a few eunuchs surrounded the fireworks, preparing to light them. On the horizon, Kongming lanterns floated in the night sky, reflecting the light of the stars in the night sky. This was the first time Yeshu had calmed down and admired the scenery of this world. This was the first time he truly felt that this was not just the world inside a novel. For many people, this was the reality where they live their lives. They were all real existences, people of flesh and blood. Naturally, this included the person beside him. Jin Wang was not in the mood to admire the scenery. He carefully wrapped Yeshu's fox fur coat tightly around his waist, as if he was afraid that Yeshu would accidentally fall down. Yeshu tilted his head and looked over. Jin Wang's reaction tonight was completely unexpected. He had never thought that this person would have such thoughts. This young emperor seemed to have been born this way. He had always been so certain, domineering and unreasonable when it came to the things he had decided on. But it was precisely because of this that he seemed so dazzling. Yeshu looked at him in a daze, then suddenly said, Jin Wang. Suddenly, a loud boom came from the distance, interrupting Yeshu's words. Then, a series of fireworks rose from the palace, bursting into the darkness of the night. It was the new year. Jin Wang turned around, his handsome eyes smiling. His lips moved slightly, but his voice was completely drowned out by the noise of the fireworks. "What are you saying?" Yeshu wanted to ask, but Jin Wang suddenly lowered his head and kissed him on the lips. This kiss was light and long, and Jin Wang did not release him until the fireworks stopped. "I wanted to do this just now at Fangxian Pavilion." Jin Wang pressed his forehead against his and laughed. "But I didn't dare to take advantage of you then. I was afraid that you would get angry and run away." Yeshu's breathing was uneven from his kiss and his cheeks were slightly red. "You're no longer afraid now." "I am." Jin Wang looked into his eyes. "So will you leave?" "Yeshu, I don't know." Jin Wang kissed him without any explanation. He pressed Yeshu against the dragon's head and kissed him even harder than before. "Think carefully before you answer." Jin Wang retreated half an inch, a teasing smile in his eyes. "Will you leave?" Yeshu pursed his lips tightly. The distance between the two of them was so close that Yeshu's lips could touch the other's as soon as he opened his mouth. "Let me down," Yeshu said. Jin Wang did not give up. "Answer first, or I won't let you go." Yeshu still did not answer. "Hurry up and let me down." Jin Wang smiled helplessly, but he did not dare to let him sit on the roof for too long. He hugged Yeshu and leaped off the roof, carrying him back into the hall. As the night deepened, the imperial palace gradually quieted down. The lights in Yangzin Palace Hall were also extinguished. Yeshu leaned against Jin Wang's chest, his eyes slightly closed. In the darkness, Jin Wang asked, "What are you thinking about?" Yeshu did not open his eyes. He said in a low voice, "I'm thinking about why are you so sure of yourself? As an emperor, shouldn't you be careful and cautious? I made up so many excuses but you didn't believe a single one of them." He sighed softly. "But when I told you such an absurd story tonight, why didn't you think I'm lying to you again? What you said tonight is indeed inconceivable. No matter who you tell this to, I'm afraid they will laugh it off." "But you believed it?" "Yes, I believed it." Jin Wang's voice was very soft. "I'm willing to believe you." Yeshu asked, "Why?" "You know the answer in your heart." Jin Wang said, "Because I love you." Yeshu's fingertips trembled slightly. "Because I love you, I'm willing to believe everything you say, even if it seems like wishful thinking." Jin Wang's voice was low and clear in the darkness. "There was a period of time when I really didn't know what to do with you. You helped me when I was in trouble and we were companions for a long time, but there was also the resentment of your betrayal. In the forest near the hunting ground, on the night you tried to escape, I wanted to kill you countless times. But you were so weak at that time and you trusted me so unreservedly and relied on me. At that time, you were exactly like the person in my memory. I just couldn't do it. After missing that opportunity, there's just no way I would be able to do it in the future." Jin Wang laughed lightly. "What a pity. If I had only understood such a simple truth then." Jin Wang asked, "Ashu, do you still need some time to think things through?" I'm just worried." Yeshu said in a low voice, "What if, and I'm just saying what if, I'm not the person you know and because of me, the person in your heart can never come back? Then how unfair would that be to you?" Jin Wang interrupted, "Are you really just worried about this?" Yeshu was stunned. Jin Wang sighed, then turned over and pressed Yeshu into the bed. The hall was dim and only a little moonlight flowed in, enveloping the two figures. Their eyes reflected each other's appearance. After a while, Jin Wang said, "You've been the one asking all this time. I also have a question that I want to ask you." Yeshu couldn't avoid looking at him in this position. He forced himself to turn his head. Go ahead." Jin Wang asked, "Why didn't you leave with Xiao Huan just now?" Yeshu was stunned. "If you had left just now, I would never have known the truth. You could have lived freely in another place in this world." Jin Wang's eyes shone. Why didn't you leave? Yeshu pursed his lips. Because I felt that I had taken over someone else's body and lied to you for so long. I couldn't just leave like that. Jin Wang asked, just that? Yeshu felt inexplicably guilty under his gaze. Yes, Jews that. Then what about now? You've already explained everything clearly, and I don't blame you. Do you still want to leave? Yeshu fell silent. Jin Wang stared at him for a while, then suddenly let him go. He stood up without any reluctance, his back facing Yeshu. His voice was soft and cold. I'm not joking, nor am I threatening you. Yeshu, I'll ask you one last time. Do you want to leave the capital? Yeshu looked at his back. He opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. If you want, I'll give you a decree right now, allowing you to leave the capital. I won't ask where you go, and I won't disturb you for the rest of your life, Jin Wang said. An emperor does not take back his word. I'll do as I say. His tone was very soft, but it carried the dignity of an emperor. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly dropped to the freezing point. Yeshu sat at the head of the bed and slowly curled up his legs. Jin Wang said coldly, Yeshu, tell me your decision. Yeshu's body trembled slightly. I don't know. Yeshu's eyes reddened slightly. He repeated in a small voice, I don't know. Jin Wang breathed a sigh of relief. Is it that hard to say that you don't want to leave? Jin Wang returned to the side of the bed and hugged the trembling body. I'm sorry. I'll be patient in the future, but I don't want to wait any longer. This was the third time he had apologized tonight. Yeshu raised his head. His eyes were like a little rabbit's, moist and red. You don't want to leave. It has nothing to do with those so-called identities and secrets. Jin Wang looked at him seriously. You don't want to accept my guess tonight because you're worried that I won't be able to accept it if you're wrong. It's because you can't accept that result. Ashu, I don't know what you went through in that world to make you so cautious, not daring to own up to your feelings. Jin Wang stroked Yeshu's pale face. His voice was gentle. You're afraid of losing what you have, so you'd rather not believe in it. You don't want to believe it? Yeshu's lips trembled. I don't know what you're talking about. All right, then let's talk about something else. Jin Wang said, do you like being with me? Yeshu's eyelashes fluttered. Jin Wang leaned forward and pulled him into his arms. Do you like it when I hug you like this? Yeshu still didn't answer. Jin Wang moved closer and planted a kiss on Yeshu's eyelids. He kissed him from the corners of his eyes, to the side of his face, to the bridge of his nose, all the way to the corner of his lips. Jin Wang raised his head. Do you like it when I kiss you? Yeshu's breathing became rapid. Jin Wang was very patient. He pressed him back onto the bed and kissed him, comforted him bit by bit. His actions seemed to have some kind of magical power. It was like a bewitching spell that made him gradually throw away his armor and sink into the abyss of gentleness. Jin Wang raised his head and smiled gently. You see, you like it? He paused for a moment and then said, don't talk to me about the Omega's physiology. There's no book that says that. You've read so much these past few days, do you still not understand? Wanting to be with someone at all times, longing for hugs and kisses. It's not the because of being an Omega. It's here. Jin Wang pressed against his chest. Do you feel it? Yeshu's heart beat so quickly that it seemed like it was going to burst out of his chest. Jin Wang looked at Yeshu seriously. He raised his hand and stroked Yeshu's hair. After a while, he said softly, Yeshu, you've fallen in love with me. End chapter. Marked by a tyrant after transmigrating. Chapter 47. Jin Wang's eyes were blazing and the corners of his lips curved up at just the right angle. Even at a time like this, he still had the calmness and boldness of being in control of the entire situation. This was an innate temperament that could only be formed after years of being in a high position. Yeshu seemed to have been robbed of his ability to speak. His lips trembled slightly and he couldn't say a single word. He didn't know how to answer. Faced with Jin Wang's questioning, he couldn't deny it. He didn't even have the courage to lie. Yeshu would probably never been in a more difficult situation than he was currently in. Perhaps it was because he was too slow on certain matters, or perhaps it was because he never dared or was willing to think about these things. He didn't belong to this world, and he even used feelings that didn't belong to him to use this person in front of him. He was the least qualified person to think about these things. Yeshu always had an almost escapist mentality towards this world. As long as he didn't miss anyone or anything in this world, and only treated this world as a world in a novel, he could do anything to survive. He could make countless lies to deceive others and he could also withdraw at any time. But once he started to immerse himself in this world, everything would change. So he kept telling himself in his heart to not care, to not take it seriously, and that everything that happened here was not real. Until today, when Jin Wang exposed all the thoughts that he didn't want to and didn't dare to think about in front of him. If you hadn't told me everything tonight, I would have waited a little longer. Jin Wang pinched Yeshu's cheek and chuckled. I've never seen anyone like you. I'm a dignified emperor, but what do you think I am? Just someone to ease your worries. Of course not. Yeshu pursed his lips. His voice was dry, and he wanted to say something but stopped himself. Jin Wang didn't force him. He straightened up slightly and waited quietly. Yeshu took a deep breath and slowly said, I think. I want to think about it for a few more days. Jin Wang's eyes flickered. Yeshu hurriedly said, a few more days will be enough. I'll give you an answer. There were too many things happening tonight. I'm a mess right now. I don't know. It's all right. Jin Wang stroked Yeshu's hair comfortingly. If you can't figure it out, you can think about it tomorrow. You can have as much time as you want. Ashu, it's all right, don't force yourself. Yeshu's eyes were a little hot. He lowered his head and buried it in Jin Wang's arms. Why are you suddenly so nice to me? Jin Wang was stunned. Yeshu's voice was muffled. Isn't it good for you to be like before? Now that you're like this, Yeshu clutched his sleeve, his voice slightly choked. If I don't treat you better, you'll scold me again. Jin Wang gently stroked his hair. Besides, what if you run away again if I don't do this? Jin Wang pulled the quilt and wrapped it tightly around the person in his arms. He whispered in his ear, I was lying to you earlier. In fact, I was very worried tonight. The Duke of Huguo's fief is thousands of li away from the capital. Not to mention the bumpy journey, your body might not be able to take it. If you really go there, how will Zhen be able to see you again? Jin Wang sighed. My little imperial consort thinks about running away every day. Shouldn't Zhen behave better and spend more effort to make you stay? Dog Emperor. Yeshu whispered. I knew you didn't have good intentions. Jin Wang laughed. All right, it's time to rest. As he spoke, he moved his hand down and touched his slightly bulging belly. Even if you're not tired, the child should be tired. Yeshu blinked. That's right. The imperial physician had specially instructed him that this was the time when the child was growing the fastest. He had to sleep early to recover his energy. He had almost forgotten about this little brat. Yeshu obediently lay down and closed his eyes. His breathing quickly calmed down. The moon was cold and the hall was so quiet that only the steady breathing of the two people could be heard. After a long time, Yeshu quietly opened his eyes. He couldn't fall asleep. With so many things happening, it would be strange if he could fall asleep. Yeshu looked up. The person beside him had his eyes closed and his breathing was calm and steady. Under the moonlight, Yeshu could clearly see the other person's long and slender eyelashes. They were like small fans that cast a small shadow on his face. Whether it was in real life or in the novel, Jin Wang was the most beautiful person he had ever seen. This person was still so good to him. This was too unfair. Yeshu lowered his eyes and whispered, "If you continue to be like this, even if I'm not the original, I will." Hiss. Yeshu suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. The little brat kicked him in the stomach. After being witness in a quarrel with for an entire night, the little pup finally couldn't take it anymore and began to throw a tantrum. Yeshu frowned and held his stomach. He endured the discomfort and angrily said, "Little bastard, do you believe that I won't want you anymore?" Perhaps it was because he had been disturbed from his sleep, but Jin Wang pulled Yeshu into his embrace. One of his hands landed on his lower abdomen and gently stroked it. After being comforted by his father, the little pup gradually calmed down and stopped making a fuss. "Go to sleep." Jin Wang didn't open his eyes and said very softly, "Stop making a fuss." It wasn't clear whether these words of comfort were meant for Yeshu or the little pup, but Yeshu enjoyed it very much. He rested his forehead on Jin Wang's chest and his restless heart suddenly calmed down. Yeshu closed his eyes and allowed his consciousness to fall into a deep sleep. For the next few days, the two of them had a tacit understanding and didn't mention this matter again. After New Year's Eve, there were 3 days of rest. On the last day of the break, Yeshu mentioned that he wanted to leave the palace. Return to the residence. When this matter was brought up, the two of them were eating lunch. Jin Wang's eyes flickered. "Why do you want to go there?" Yeshu said, I just want to. I want to see where I used to live. Maybe I can find some clues." Jin Wang wasn't surprised. It should be said that ever since Yeshu had told him everything, he had already expected that this person would have such thoughts. Yeshu didn't have that memory in his mind, so it was very difficult to convince him to accept the relationship with the original. He wanted to use this opportunity to revisit the place and find some evidence. Jin Wang pondered for a moment and hesitated. Yeshu was nervously asked, "Can't I?" "It's not that you can't, it's just that." Jin Wang sighed and shook his head, "Forget it. If you want to go, I'll go with you." The two of them changed into civilian clothes and left the imperial palace in a carriage. They quickly arrived at the back door of the residence. Jin Wang casually tore open the seal on the door and pushed it hard. The wooden door, which hadn't been opened for a long time, creaked open and raised a cloud of dust. When the dust settled, Yeshu could clearly see the scene inside. The last time they were here, they only went to the narrow alley outside the back door and didn't enter the residence. Yeshu didn't know what the current situation in the residence was like. Until today. The residence no longer had its former glory. In the courtyard, the fields that used to be planted with flowers and plants had been completely overturned. Even the lotus pond had dried up. Snow that hadn't completely melted was scattered all over the place. It looked rather bleak. The doors of every room in the residence were wide open. At a glance, it was completely empty. There was nothing inside. "Yeshu." Jin Wang coughed lightly and said, "This place has been raided by the Imperial Army 3 times. There shouldn't be anything left." I can see that." Yeshu's voice was hoarse. Jin Wang's Imperial Army was quite good at their job. In this shabby place, they probably wouldn't be able to find even a single copper coin. Jin Wang said, "The things that were confiscated are still in the Supreme Court. If you want to take a look, I can take you there." Yeshu shook his head, "There's no need. Those things must have been searched by Jin Wang many times. If there were any clues, Jin Wang would have found them long ago." Yeshu said, "Let's just walk around casually." The residence wasn't very big. In addition, it had been raided and emptied. Yeshu and Jin Wang quickly went through the entire residence. They didn't find anything. 2 hours later, Yeshu sat by the dried-up lotus pond and looked at the bleak courtyard in the distance. Actually, finding clues here was secondary. He just felt that if he had some kind of connection with the original, he should have found something when he came here again. Even if it was just a sense of déjà vu. That was how it was written in novels. But the truth was, there was nothing. He had been deceived. Yeshu leaned against the railing of the lotus pond and sighed heavily. If you can't remember, take your time. Don't worry. Jin Wang came up from behind him and hugged him. I'll order someone to send your things back to Yangzin Palace Hall. Take your time to search. We'll find some clues. Yeshu turned his head and happened to see the other's handsome side profile. The afternoon sun came out for the first time. The sunlight was warm and genial, warming people from their limbs to their hearts. Yeshu was a bit absent-minded. He looked away. Why do you trust me so much? Aren't you afraid that I'm just acting with you to get back the things that you confiscated? There are a lot of letters and secrets in there. If you want them, you can just find me. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Jin Wang said, I said I would trust you. If you can't be at ease, how can you be at ease staying by my side? Yeshu was speechless. The clear weather after the snow always calmed people's hearts. A gentle breeze blew through the desolate courtyard, blowing through the weeds and snow. The two's hair tangled in the wind. Yeshu looked at Jin Wang's side profile. After a while, he closed his eyes and sighed, you can't be like this. Jin Wang, what's wrong? You'll make me. It would make him not want to think about the original's matters. It would make him want to take over the other's life for once. Yeshu shook his head and broke free from Jin Wang's embrace. It's fine. Let's go. There's nothing to see here. Jin Wang asked, aren't you going to search some more? No need. Let's go back and look at the things you've taken. He gathered his clothes and walked forward. I don't know what the original was thinking. For better or worse, he lived here for 3 years. It was clean and there was no evidence of him colluding with the enemy. When he said this, his voice suddenly stopped. That's not right. This courtyard was built by Jin Wang after the original owner became the prime minister and was given to him. The original owner had only lived here for 3 years. And in these 3 years, the original owner's actions had become strange. If it was really as Jin Wang guessed, the original's consciousness was not under his control for 3 years. Then the person who lived here was not the original. The place he should be looking for was not here. End chapter. Marked by a tyrant after transmigrating. Chapter 48. If he wanted to find a place that was important to the original owner and left a deep impression on him, then it shouldn't be the Prime Minister's residence, but rather, the Cold Palace. From when the original met Jin Wang to when Jin Wang ascended the throne, it was the span of a full 10 years. When Jin Wang was young, his mother had been a pampered concubine for a period of time. However, the emperor was ruthless and Jin Wang's mother quickly fell out of favor due to being framed. She was demoted and sent to the Cold Palace until she died of a serious illness. Only the original and Jin Wang were left to depend on each other. They lived in the Cold Palace for a full 5 years and plotted for 5 years before Jin Wang finally regained his identity as an imperial prince and leave the Cold Palace. Why have you been feeling uneasy since just now? What are you thinking about? Jin Wang held Yeshu's hand as they slowly walked down the small path in the back courtyard of the residence and asked in a gentle voice. Yeshu suddenly came back to his senses and raised his head to look into Jin Wang's beautiful eyes. He opened his mouth but suddenly stopped. In that moment, he actually didn't want to tell Jin Wang his conclusion. It was a kind of mixed feelings. He was the one who suggested coming here to investigate the truth, but he was also the one who was afraid of finding out the truth. Jin Wang also stopped walking and raised his hand to brush a strand of loose hair behind his ear. Are you in a bad mood because you didn't find any clues? Yeshu narrowed his eyes. Take it slow, there's no need to rush. Jin Wang said, "Didn't this emperor say before that you don't need to give this emperor an answer so quickly?" He held Yeshu's hand and continued walking forward. Jin Wang said, "This emperor plans to find a chance to renovate this place after a while." "Why?" "I need to give you a residence outside of the palace." Jin Wang smiled, "If one day this emperor makes you unhappy, it's better to come here than to run around somewhere unknown." Yeshu's heart skipped a beat as he turned his head and said, "That's not necessarily true. I can go and find Chang Yuan. I heard that his shop has already opened and business is quite good." Jin Wang frowned slightly. Yeshu still wanted to walk forward, but Jin Wang grabbed his wrist and gently pulled him into his arms. "Have I been too nice to you recently?" Jin Wang half pushed and half hugged Yeshu against a tree by the roadside. He narrowed his eyes threateningly and said, "You have guts to dare to mention another alpha in front of me." Yeshu had been spoiled by Jin Wang for the past few days, so he had become bolder and bolder. He was not afraid of him. "Yes, or I go to Huainan to look for Xiao Huan or the Great Yan to look for Yu Yan, and..." Jin Wang kissed that unruly mouth. After a while, he retreated a little and bit Yeshu's lower lip. "Where else do you want to go?" Yeshu's lips were dark red. He said in pain, "Are you a dog? I've been scolded by you so many times. Can't I fulfill my promise for once?" Jin Wang licked Yeshu's lips in a fit of pique. "You're not allowed to go anywhere." "Where else can I go?" Yeshu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Is there anywhere in the capital that you can't find? As for leaving the capital, with this little brat around, I can't even stay in the carriage for 2 hours. How can I go to those places?" Jin Wang looked into Yeshu's eyes and nodded. "Yes, Zhen understand." "Then you still. Zhen just want to hear you say it again." Jin Wang's eyes flashed with a sly smile. "Say that you can only stay by my side." Yeshu looked away. "So childish." Jin Wang was surprised. "Are your ears red?" "No." Jin Wang pretended to be serious. "Your face is red, too." "Jin Wang." Jin Wang burst out laughing. Yeshu was really embarrassed this time. He pushed Jin Wang aside and wanted to leave. Jin Wang smiled and pulled him back. "Hey, wait." His voice stopped abruptly. A piercing sound cutting through the air could be heard. Jin Wang quickly hugged Yeshu and turned around. A short arrow pierced through the snow-covered branches and brushed past the two of them and deeply embedding itself in a tree trunk. There was an assassin. "Are you all right?" The courtyard was silent. The assassin was hidden in the shadows. Jin Wang immediately looked down at Yeshu. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." Yeshu's face was pale as he nodded. The Emperor of Changlu naturally wouldn't go out alone, but the assassin had clearly come prepared. Countless short arrows flew towards the two of them, but a few of his personal bodyguards jumped down from somewhere and blocked the arrows one by one. One of the guards knelt on the ground. "Your Majesty, there are many assassins. Please go into the house and take shelter for the time being." Jin Wang, "Very well." The guards quickly escorted the two of them to the nearest house. The rain of arrows had not stopped, so no one saw that a cold arrow was quietly aimed in their direction from the shadows of the treetops at the side of the house. In front of the arrow was Yeshu's unguarded back. The moment the two of them entered the house, the short arrow pierced through the air. In the next instant, Jin Wang moved sideways to block Yeshu's back. Blood spurted out and splattered onto Yeshu's snow-white fox fur coat. "Your Majesty." The sound of footsteps and shouts all around became chaotic. The assassin who shot the arrow was quickly taken down. More people surrounded Jin Wang and escorted him into the house. However, Jin Wang's hand was still tightly grasping Yeshu's. Yeshu staggered and was also helped into the house. This was a small firewood shed located in the rear courtyard. Everything inside had been cleaned out long ago, and there wasn't even a place to sit. Jin Wang sat on the ground. The blood-stained arrow had pierced through his shoulder, and the blood had pooled on the ground in front of him. The emperor's personal guards were all well trained. Several of them quickly sealed his acupoints to stop the bleeding. Jin Wang only tilted his head. He raised the hand that was still holding Yeshu's hand and covered his eyes. "Don't look." Yeshu became dizzy from seeing the blood. If he looked any longer, he would feel uncomfortable. However, Yeshu took his hand and held it tightly in the hollow of his palm. Yeshu's hands were even colder than Jin Wang's. He suddenly remembered that this unforeseen event was also mentioned in the novel. At the beginning of the new year, a faction in the imperial court that had colluded with the enemy finally couldn't hold back and sent an assassin to assassinate the emperor. However, in the novel, Jin Wang wasn't injured at all. It was all his fault. If he hadn't been so afraid of the slightest thing and let his imagination run wild, insisting on coming here to find the so-called truth. If he had known martial arts, he wouldn't have been such a burden. If he hadn't wanted to protect him. "Don't cry." Jin Wang held his hand. "I'm fine. Nothing will happen to me at all." His words of comfort weren't convincing at all. The arrow wound had been very close to his vitals. The guards didn't even dare to pull it out for him. If Jin Wang hadn't had some martial arts foundation, he probably would have fainted long ago. If it had been just a little more. "Why are you crying so hard? Such a crybaby." Jin Wang's face was pale from excessive blood loss. He raised the hand that could still move and wiped away Yeshu's tears. The fight outside hadn't ended yet and there were quite a few people inside the room. Yeshu tilted his head and wiped his eyes. He asked in a small voice, "Does it hurt?" "It doesn't hurt." Jin Wang paused, then corrected himself. "Actually, it hurts a little." Jin Wang's face grew paler and paler. He forced a smile at Yeshu. "If you give me a kiss, it won't hurt anymore." Yeshu smiled through his tears. "You." As Jin Wang spoke, he pulled at his wound and sucked in a breath of pain. He only felt that his strength was depleting faster and faster, and his body was gradually becoming cold. Jin Wang leaned against the wall and slowly closed his eyes. Suddenly, he felt a soft and cold touch on his lips. Yeshu kissed him. Jin Wang closed his eyes slightly and smiled gently. He pressed against the back of Yeshu's head and deepened the kiss. With the bitterness of his tears and the faint taste of blood, this kiss was short and deep. Soon, Jin Wang's hand fell limply to his side. But Yeshu still didn't let go. He pressed against Jin Wang's lips and gently and slowly kissed and licked. Even though Jin Wang's strength was already at its limit, his consciousness was also becoming drowsy and he was unable to respond. But Yeshu knew that Jin Wang could feel it. This unforeseen event came quickly and ended quickly. The assassins outside the room were quickly apprehended, but because Jin Wang's injuries were close to his vitals, he had to be immediately sent back to the palace for treatment. The imperial bodyguards helped Jin Wang onto the carriage, and Yeshu carefully let him lean on his shoulder. Just as he was about to give the order to set off, one of the imperial bodyguards asked, "Young master, how should we deal with the captured assassins?" Yeshu's thoughts were all on Jin Wang, so he casually said, "Lock them up first. We'll interrogate them after His Majesty recovers." The imperial bodyguard looked somewhat hesitant. Yeshu asked, "What's wrong?" "These people just now." "Just now," the imperial bodyguard paused, then said truthfully, "They claim to be remnants of Minister Yes faction." Yeshu subconsciously tilted his head to look at the person beside him. Jin Wang's lips were pale and his eyes were tightly shut. He didn't know if he had heard anything. The left Prime Minister Yeshu's henchmen had already been wiped out during the investigation of his rebellion. Was he being used as a shield? Or did the original really have remnants of his henchmen? Yeshu lowered his head and asked in a small voice, "Do you still believe in me?" Jin Wang didn't answer. After a while, he raised his hand and took out a command sigil from his bosom, handing it over to Yeshu. The command sigil still had the remnants of Jin Wang's body temperature. The white jade surface was stained with blood, and it looked quite shocking. Yeshu gripped the command sigil tightly and smiled softly. He tilted his head and gave an order. Bring them back. I'll personally interrogate them. End chapter.